I'll craft the full script in one flowing narration. English US. First person. Voiceover style. Natural emotional cinematic. No labels. No sections. No breaks. Just a continuous story. Approx. 300, 2,400 words. I gave them 10 days. 10. And on day 11, when that HOA still refused to remove the pavilion they'd illegally planted on my land, I climbed into a lawn chair, sipped my coffee, and watched a bulldozer plow straight through it like it was tissue paper. I thought that was the end. Turns out it was just the opening shot of a war that would expose fraud, tear apart an entire HOA, and drag their president to the brink of criminal charges. It all started the day I inherited 15 acres of land from my Uncle Ray. When the estate attorney called, I pictured something peaceful. Maybe a hobby farm, some chickens, maybe even a barn where I could stash my tools and pretend I knew how to fix things. I didn't picture a battlefield. I didn't picture a suburban kingdom run by a woman who thought HOA president meant God Empress of the county. The land was beautiful in that rugged Texas way, uneven wild, dotted with old oaks. But there was this one clearing on the southern edge, a perfect spot for the barn I'd been daydreaming about. I pulled up early that morning in my old Ford F-250, fresh coffee in hand, deed folded on the passenger seat. I stepped out, stretched, took a breath of clean air, and then froze. There, sitting dead center in the clearing like it had been delivered from a catalog called Suburban Overreach Monthly, was a pristine pavilion. Brick columns, fresh lumber, landscaped flower beds, benches arranged like someone was expecting a church picnic. And the kicker, a big sign screwed into one of the posts that read, HOA Recreation Pavilion. Members only. Members only. On my land. For a second, I honestly wondered if I was the one trespassing. Then instinct kicked in. I pulled up the county GIS map, zoomed into the parcel, and my stomach just dropped. That pavilion wasn't even close to the boundary line. It sat a good 10 feet inside my land. Mine. I took screenshots. I paced. I swore. Then, like an idiot with too much faith in humanity, I decided to call the HOA. The phone rang once before a chirpy voice answered, Oak Bluff Preserve Association. This is Karen speaking. Of course her name was Karen. I introduced myself, told her I was the new owner of the parcel next to their neighborhood, and explained politely at first that their pavilion was on my property. She paused just long enough to let me know I wasn't going to like whatever came next. Oh, that she finally said with this sugary, condescending tone that made me want to throw my phone. We've been using that area for years. Your uncle gave us permission. I said, Do you have anything in writing? She perked up. He sent us a thank you note once. 10 minutes later, she emailed me a photo of a faded postcard with a picture of a beach on the front and a scribbled line inside that read, Thanks for keeping the pavilion tidy. Much appreciated. No signature, no date, no actual permission. That was their legal proof. I called her back and said, This doesn't prove anything. Oh, it's more than enough, she said. We've maintained that space for years. It's effectively part of our commons. My patience snapped in half. The way she spoke like I was a child interrupting adult business made my teeth grind. I hung up before I said something regrettable, sat against the hood of my truck, and watched the sunlight hit that pavilion. It looked peaceful. It looked harmless. And I hated it. I drove straight to my lawyer. Randolph Baines had been doing property law in Travis County longer than I've been alive. He read through the deed GIS screenshots and Karen's stupid postcard, set his coffee down, and said, They built that without a permit. No easement, no license, no nothing. They have zero legal ground. 10 minutes later, we sent a cease and desist letter giving the HOA 10 business days to remove the pavilion and restore my land. On day 3, the retaliation started. First, a voicemail from Environmental Compliance claiming I had an unsecured open well on the property. I drove out to check. The well was capped tighter than a bank vault. Next day, a letter accusing me of illegal dumping. I found 3 black trash bags. Someone had obviously planted torn open food scraps scattered everywhere. Day 5. A complaint that I was illegally cutting protected trees. I laughed out loud. The only thing I'd cut was poison ivy. But the laughter didn't last. Something was wrong. These weren't random complaints. Someone was pushing buttons inside the county system. I started doubting myself. I started wondering if I'd stepped into a fight bigger than I could handle. I started asking myself questions I hated. Is this worth it? What if they can ruin me financially? What if I'm the one making a mistake? For the first time, I felt genuinely small. But anger is a hell of a motivator. I hired an independent environmental firm. They did a 70-page assessment proving every allegation was pure fiction. I sent the report to the local newspaper. A week later, an article ran titled, "HOA Weaponizes Bureaucracy Against New Landowner." That's when things got weird. I came home one evening to find a plain manila envelope duct taped to my gate. Inside was a USB drive and a note that said, "Watch this. Don't trust the maps." The video on the drive showed something I didn't think was possible. The county GIS system my property line edited, literally reshaped. The southern border, once a straight line, now curved inward just enough to place the pavilion inside HOA boundaries. And then the second file, a blurry printout of an email between county staffers. Subject line boundary adjustment, Oak Bluff South. Body proceed with quiet update. Keep documentation internal. My hands went cold. This wasn't a land dispute anymore. This was fraud. Coordinated, deliberate fraud. I hired a GIS consultant through Randolph. He confirmed the boundary had been altered 16 months earlier. It wasn't new. It wasn't a glitch. It was premeditated. Karen hadn't just crossed a line. She'd moved it. The HOA then held a community meeting about protecting the pavilion, and I showed up. Karen strutted around like she owned the state of Texas, presenting slides of birthday parties and barbecues at my clearing, painting me as some kind of villain threatening community values. Then she put up an aerial photo showing the edited GIS map and said, "As you can see, the pavilion is within our buffer zone." I stood up, walked to the front, and held a foam board with the original parcel map right next to her edited version. The difference was embarrassing. "No legal lines were crossed," I said, "because you had them moved." The room went silent. That night, another envelope appeared at my gate. A photo of Karen standing inside a county GIS office with a young man in a department polo shirt pointing at a screen. On the back, someone wrote, "He's the one. Name's Jamie. Ask about quiet revisions." That was it. I was done playing defense. I dug into the Texas property code and found exactly what I needed. If someone builds a structure on your land without legal right, the owner can remove it. Period. No permit, no permission, no problem. So I called Mitch. Mitch is one of those guys who looks like he was born on a bulldozer. We went to high school together. He once flipped a trailer for a YouTube challenge. When he picked up, he didn't say hello. He just asked, "You want it loud or surgical?" "Make it poetic," I told him. 2 mornings later, the sun was barely up when he rolled onto my land with a bulldozer, a flatbed, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting Johnny Cash. I sat back with my coffee, ready to watch the most satisfying demolition of my life. The first hit sounded like a thunderclap. A brick column exploded into dust. The roof groaned, then split down the middle. Benches snapped like pretzel sticks. The grill shrieked as metal twisted. 15 minutes later, the pavilion was a pile of rubble. And that's when the HOA cavalry arrived. Teslas, Range Rovers. Karen's Lexus sliding to a dramatic stop. She stormed across the clearing, screaming, "Stop this now. This is community property. You are committing a crime." Mitch didn't look up. He just dropped another wall. I stood, raised my coffee, and said, "Karen, you're trespassing." "You can't do this," she shrieked. "You had 10 days to remove it," I said. "You chose not to." She threatened jail lawsuits, emotional damages to the community. Yes, she actually said that, then called the police. When the sheriff's deputies arrived, I handed them a stack of documents so thick it could be used as a weapon. The deed, the cease and desist photos, GIS overlays, environmental reports, even the mystery emails. One deputy flipped through the papers, looked at Karen, and said, "Ma'am, he's within his rights." Karen stared like someone had pulled the plug on her brain. She opened her mouth closed. It opened it again. Nothing came out. Mitch finished the job by scooping up the members only sign and flattening it into the mud before handing it to me like a trophy. 2 weeks later, I got served. The HOA sued me for destroying community property, causing emotional distress and damaging neighborhood morale. One woman claimed her child cried every time they drove past my gate. Their lawyer clearly got paid by the word. Randolph didn't flinch. They overplayed their hand, he said. Time to go nuclear. We filed a counterclaim accusing the HOA of unauthorized construction, environmental violations, harassment, falsifying government records, abuse of process, and defamation. We subpoenaed Jamie, the GIS tech, for testimony. Court day was packed. Karen walked in wearing a navy suit like she was auditioning for HOA President the movie. Her lawyer gave a dramatic speech about community unity and preserving tradition. Then Randolph stood up, opened 2 giant binders, and dismantled them piece by piece. He showed the original boundary, the edited boundary, the timestamps, the emails. Then we called Jamie. The kid looked terrified, but once he started talking, everything spilled out. Karen had asked him to adjust the boundary. A councilman had facilitated the request. He'd been told to keep it off the record. He'd even been paid through a HOA consulting fund. Then came the expert witness, a retired city planner, who stated the boundary modification was blatantly illegal. The judge recessed. When we returned, the HOA bench looked like a funeral procession. But the collapse wasn't complete until Alan, an older HOA board member, stood up during a break and said, "I'd like to make a statement." He described Karen threatening residents, manipulating votes, altering meeting minutes, running Oak Bluff like her own suburban dictatorship. The judge didn't waste time. He ruled in my favor on every point. HOA's claims dismissed with prejudice. Pavilion confirmed illegal. Karen's actions referred to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. And the HOA was ordered to pay me $100,000 in damages, legal fees, and publish a public admission of fault. Karen didn't say a word. She just sat there frozen as her empire collapsed around her. When I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't cheer. I didn't fist pump. I just felt quiet, like the storm had finally passed. The lesson: if someone builds a monument to arrogance on your land, don't be afraid to knock it down.